Your brain runs on electricity. Every thought, every memory, every flicker of fear or joy is a wave of electrical activity moving through billions of connected cells. Scientists call this activity gamma waves, a fast, high-frequency signal linked to focused attention, memory retrieval, and dreaming. When your heart stops supplying oxygen to your brain, you would expect all of that electrical activity to simply shut off, like a light switch. For decades, that is exactly what scientists assumed. Textbooks described it as a quiet, gradual fade, a system running out of fuel and going dark in silence. In 2022, doctors were monitoring an 87-year-old patient's brain when his heart stopped beating. Nobody expected what the machines recorded. For 30 seconds after his heart went still, his brain lit up in patterns almost identical to deep memory recall and dreaming. He was not conscious. He was not awake. But something inside his skull was still working, still organizing, still reaching for something. Scientists had never captured this moment so clearly before. You have probably heard the phrase, "Your life flashes before your eyes." You have probably assumed it was a myth, a comforting story, something poets invented to soften an unbearable moment. But new research suggests your brain may actually do something close to that. Not as fiction, as biology. Your brain, in its last active seconds, may replay pieces of your life on purpose. Let's slow down and understand what is actually happening inside your skull when your body begins shutting down. This is not folklore. This is neuroscience, and it is only now becoming clear because monitoring technology has finally caught up to the speed of the process. But that is not what the data shows. In multiple documented cases, brain scans have picked up a surge, not a shutdown, in the final seconds after the heart stops. Gamma wave activity spikes. The regions responsible for memory and consciousness, areas like the hippocampus, become more active, not less. Your brain, in what looks like its last available moment, seems to organize a final, highly coordinated burst of activity. Researchers have compared these patterns to what your brain looks like when you dream, or when you are deeply absorbed in recalling something meaningful. Here is the part that should make you sit with this for a moment. This isn't random static. Random static wouldn't look like memory recall. Random static wouldn't organize itself into recognizable patterns tied to attention and recollection. Something about your brain, even in its final window, appears to be trying to make sense of something. What could it possibly be trying to understand? To understand how researchers even found this, you have to picture the setting. Intensive care units run constant brain monitors on critically ill patients, mostly to watch for seizures. In a handful of rare cases, patients happen to be connected to these monitors at the exact moment their hearts stopped. Nobody planned it. Nobody could have. But because the equipment was already recording, scientists were handed an accidental window into a moment that almost nobody survives to describe. That is part of why this discovery feels so rare. It wasn't built in a lab on purpose. It was witnessed by chance, by machines that simply happened to be listening at the right second. But that's not even the strangest part of what scientists have found. Around the world, in intensive care units and cardiac units, doctors have collected thousands of testimonies from patients who were resuscitated after their hearts had stopped. Many describe near-identical experiences, a sensation of leaving the body, a tunnel of light, a profound calm, a replay of vivid, emotionally charged memories, not random ones, but the ones that mattered most, a first kiss, a parent's voice, a childhood afternoon that seemed forgotten until that exact moment. Scientists call this phenomenon life review, and for a long time it was dismissed as hallucination born from oxygen loss. But the timing doesn't fit that explanation cleanly. Some of these gamma wave surges have been recorded happening in the very same window these experiences are reported to occur. Dr. Jimo Borjigan, a neuroscientist who has studied this phenomenon extensively, has proposed something remarkable. She suggests the brain may not be malfunctioning in its final moments. It may be performing one last, highly organized act, pulling together memory, emotion, and awareness into a final coherent experience, even as the rest of the body is failing beneath it. Think about what that means for a second. Your brain isn't designed to simply switch off. It appears to be designed to try, one last time, to make meaning. If you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who doesn't scroll past questions like these. A quick subscribe helps more of this reach you, and that's genuinely appreciated. Let's go deeper into why this might be happening, because the why is where evolutionary biology enters the picture. Your brain didn't evolve to prepare you for a graceful ending. It evolved to keep you alive at almost any cost. So why would it spend its very last reserves of energy generating something that resembles a memory highlight reel, instead of simply trying to survive? One theory points to oxygen deprivation itself. As oxygen drops, certain inhibitory systems in your brain, the systems that normally keep neural activity controlled and quiet, begin to fail first. Without those breaks, the brain's memory and emotional centers may surge freely, unchecked, for a brief window. In other words, the parts of your mind responsible for feeling and remembering may not be creating something new. They may simply be released from the systems that usually hold them back. There is a second theory worth understanding, one that comes from animal research. Studies on rats placed under similar conditions found the same gamma wave surge pattern researchers later observed in humans. This matters because it suggests the pattern isn't unique to human consciousness or human meaning-making. It may be a shared feature of complex brains in general, something ancient, something wired deep into how mammal brains are built to respond in their final active seconds, long before language or storytelling ever entered the picture. And this is where it gets harder to look away. If that theory is correct, this final surge isn't a special gift your brain saves for the end. It might be revealing something that has been quietly present the entire time you were alive, hidden beneath layers of inhibition, structure, and control. In your last seconds, your brain may not be creating a new experience. It may be unmasking one that was always running underneath, just out of reach, this whole time. Here is the counterintuitive twist that changes how you might see all of this. We have spent centuries imagining our final moments as a slow fade to darkness, a candle going out, a light switching off. But the emerging science suggests almost the opposite. In many documented cases, the brain appears to become more organized, more focused, more emotionally coherent right before it stops. Not chaos, not blankness, a strange, brief clarity. This doesn't mean scientists fully understand what this means for consciousness, or whether it tells us anything about what comes after. Researchers are careful, and rightly so, not to overstate what a gamma wave surge proves. What it does prove is this: the old assumption that your brain simply collapses the moment your heart stops is incomplete and quite possibly wrong. There's another detail that rarely makes it into the headlines. The parts of the brain most active during this surge aren't only the memory centers. They overlap heavily with what neuroscientists call the default mode network, the same network that quietly hums along whenever you daydream, reflect on your own life, or imagine yourself from the outside looking in. It's the part of you that narrates your own story to yourself, almost constantly, without you ever noticing. In these final seconds, that storytelling network appears to switch on with unusual intensity, as if your mind is compelled, one final time, to make sense of its own narrative. Some researchers go a step further and describe this surge as the brain's version of an emergency broadcast, not a warning to the outside world, but an internal one. A last coordinated signal, sent inward, gathering the pieces of a life into something briefly whole before everything goes quiet. Nobody knows exactly what, if anything, is experienced during this signal, but the pattern itself is no longer in dispute. It has now been recorded, measured, and replicated enough times that scientists can no longer treat it as a strange outlier. But that's not where this story quietly circles back to you, because here is the modern mirror in all of this. You spend your entire life collecting moments you think are unremarkable. An ordinary Tuesday, a conversation you weren't paying attention to, a walk you almost skipped, and yet, if the brain's final act really is to gather and replay what mattered most, it isn't choosing your achievements. It isn't replaying your accomplishments or your busiest, most productive days. Based on what patients describe, it reaches for connection, a voice, a face, a feeling of being loved or of loving someone else completely. Maybe that tells you something worth carrying into today, long before your own final seconds ever arrive. The version of your life your own brain seems to reach for, in what may be its last organized act, is not the version built on achievement. It's the version built on presence, on the people you noticed, on the small moments you almost let pass by unnoticed. Think about how differently you might move through an ordinary afternoon if you believed, even a little, that this exact moment could one day be part of what your own mind chooses to hold on to. Not the meeting you're rushing to, not the notification pulling at your attention, the voice beside you, the light coming through the window, the small, forgettable-seeming thing that your brain, it turns out, may never actually forget. So you started this video wondering what happens inside a brain in its final seconds. But maybe the real discovery isn't what happens at the very end. Maybe it's what your own mind is quietly keeping track of, moment by moment, long before that final surge ever begins. If any of this made you think differently about the moments you're living through right now, leave a comment and share what memory you think your own mind would reach for first. Thank you for watching.